Hello, welcome to Connie Martinson Talks Books. What does a lawyer do who, in pre-trial examination of his client, swears on his life before an audience that that man is innocent, when later he finds that maybe he was wrong, that the client is guilty? What about lawyer-client privilege? Whom should he tell if he finds out that the man is a real killer, but he has gotten him off? Well, these are just some of the agenda listed in my guest Alan Dershowitz's wonderful new novel called The Advocate's Devil, because in a way he has made art imitate life. The book is published by Warner Books, and we'll be back after a short pause with lawyer, novelist Alan Dershowitz.
The fact of the matter is, the most dangerous thing most people will ever face in the water is the water.
I see her!
This is not a drill.
Roger, have target in sight.
This is what we do
Swimmer away.
every day in the Coast Guard.
Roger.
Battling the elements to save lives is just one of the real missions we tackle.
Swimmer checking victim. Coming up.
Be part of the action in the Coast Guard. Call now toll free.
We're talking with Alan Dershowitz, author of the novel The Advocate's Devil, published by Warner Books. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you.
And yes, to all those people in the audience who have seen you marching in and out of trials and have read Chutzpah, yes, it is Alan Dershowitz, the novelist.
I'm not sure I like the company lately. Newt Gingrich has also written a novel.
No, I'm not. That's a whole other show. We're going to not talk about that now, Alan. We're going to talk about Abe Ringle. Abe Ringle, who is maybe the counterpart of Alan Dershowitz a little bit.
Well, I can give you a hint. My mother's maiden name is Ringle, and my Hebrew name is Abraham. So there is a part of me in the character. There's a part of my children, it's really my generation of lawyers, the current generation of lawyers. And he's contrasted with the older lawyer, Haskell, who is the great tradition of lawyers who never spoke to the media, who never...
But there wasn't a media then.
I know.
I mean, the most was maybe a gentleman from, like, the Boston Transcript who was showing up. But that was a different generation.
It was.
We're living in a multimedia time where computers, and certainly computers, play a part in this book.
Right.
Abe Ringle is in Cambridge, close to Harvard, has an assistant named Justin Aldrich.
Right.
The WASP part.
Well, I needed a character who was totally the opposite from passionate Abe Ringle. This is the former prosecutor who is cold and calculating, and yet, in some respects, by the end of the book, there's shifting roles. It's a generational debate in many ways. Haskell, Abe, Justin, Emma, the daughter, and it's about whether you can be a really good lawyer and also a decent human being at the same time, the kinds of conflicts that arise when the lawyer begins to suspect that his client might be guilty and dangerous.
Not only that, there's a moral story here, too, because there's the morals or morale of Rendy, who Abe and Rendy had an affair three weeks or so before Hannah, Abe's wife, had been in a car accident.
And he always felt guilty about that, and he just wants to do the right thing. He did the wrong thing once, and he has paid a very, very high price, and so he's desperately anxious to do the right thing. And in the simple world that he comes from, of the 60s, everybody knew what the right thing was, but in the 90s it became a lot more complicated for him, and he needs the advice of his mentor, of his daughter, of his friends, to try to resolve this horrible dilemma. And it's a dilemma that has been debated for 5,000 years, and we haven't come to the right resolution. How do you balance the rights of privacy, the interests in confidentiality, with the protection of society. In one of the scenes that is my favorite, Abe Ringle, toward the end, goes to see a friend of his who's a Catholic priest and said, what would you do?
Yeah.
What would you do if you honestly learned and believed from your penitent in a confession that he was a murderer and might do it again? And the priest says, I would never disclose that information because my job is not to save lives, it's to save souls. Yeah. But your job, he says to Abe Ringle, is to save lives. And Abe says, no, no, no. My job is to defend rights, to protect the Constitution, to protect the confidentiality. I can't do it. And he decides to try to do the right thing, and it comes back to haunt him in a rather dramatic and surprising way.
Oh, yes, because it's one thing to be noble about something that is ephemeral. It's another thing when, not in my backyard, when it's your daughter or your son or whoever it is who could be attacked by this serial killer or rapist or what have you.
Sure. I posed the question at one point in the book, better 10 guilty go free than 1 innocent be wrongly confined? Question mark. I mean, that's our philosophy. But what if one of those guilty comes back to hurt you or somebody close to you or dear to you? These are the kinds of dilemmas that lawyers, scholars have debated for many generations, ethicists, or the problem that Nancy Rosen faces when somebody comes to her and admits that he is the killer and that the person on death row who is about to be executed is innocent, but asks her not to tell.
Lawyer-client privilege.
But human life. I mean, is there anybody that we know who would actually allow an innocent person, even a stranger, to go to their death, even to protect a privilege or a confidentiality? These are very hard questions. And of course, morally, in one instance, we have somebody who we know who the innocent person is, and we know he's going to die. In another case, all we know is that he may go out and do it again and kill some nameless, faceless person. Is that different? The people debate that as well. And, you know, I try to write a thriller, but a very realistic moral thriller that will make people think hard about what they would do. I want people, when they read this book, to squirm and to move back and forth. Yeah, this sounds right. Yeah, this sounds right. And to understand the complexity of the problem that criminal lawyers face on a daily basis.
And also the fact that the law allows the criminal lawyer to do certain things to protect his client because he is there, as well as this new thing about if a lawyer says, don't tell me if you're guilty. I don't want to know because then I can't put you on the stand.
Right. Although this is fiction, it's obviously very realistic. It grows out of a case I had in my own life many years ago. And I try to explain how you interview a client. I set it all out, what you do, what you want to find out, what you ask them, what you don't want to know, the realism of how you pick juries with a jury expert, the realism of
Pullman is marvelous. And the whole thing about having a shadow
the shadow jury. We're seeing those now in real cases. Life does imitate art, and art does imitate life. The case that this really grows out of was one of the earliest ones in my career. I was a very young lawyer, and I was appointed pro bono to represent a young man who was accused of a terrorist murder. He belonged to a terrorist organization, and he tried to persuade me he was innocent. And he gave me some tapes that he had made of secret conversations with the police that the police didn't know he was taping. He thought these tapes would prove he was innocent. To my lawyer's ear, I heard guilt, but I also saw in those tapes enough material to help me win the case, and I had to face that conflict, just the way Abe Ringle is given some computer printout material, which is given to him to prove innocence, and he begins to suspect, my God, is this guy that manipulative? What will he do in the future? And he confronts the same moral dilemma that I faced. And I couldn't sleep at night when I faced that dilemma in real life.
Set the scene for who Joe Campbell is. And the way you do in the book, that he meets this girl, he takes her to dinner, he's a handsome, and it turns out, hey, he's a world-famous basketball star athlete.
Right, he is.
She follows him to Boston. In essence, she says, listen, I'm here. There
I'm
are
ready.
all those groupies.
I want to sleep with you. And something happens. We don't want to give away the plot.
Well, he whispers in her ear, and you don't know what it is until later on.
And we don't know whether it was a rape or it was consensual until later on. We all have our suspicions, and it's interesting that I purposely made him a white, very respectable, very well-spoken, very sophisticated person who the reader would want to find innocent. Whereas in real life, a case that could be seen close to this is Mike Tyson. The mirror image in many ways. A lot of people thought because he he is rough at the edges, that maybe he was guilty. And I honestly believe he's innocent, and yet in this book the lawyer eventually comes to suspect that his client may be guilty.
Alan, I read this and I remember a woman I knew here in Los Angeles telling me about literally date rape with a very famous TV Western star. And she said to me after telling me about the incident, "Connie, if only he had asked." I mean, the point is, date rape and this type of violence has nothing to do with sex.
Oh, I think that's right. And of course, eventually, without again giving away the plot, we learn that this guy gets his kicks out of precisely the force and not the sex. And there are people like this in the world.
Yeah.
And they generally are good-looking and sophisticated and very attractive. Otherwise, they couldn't be so successful. You know, the mythology that artists give us, that you can tell a person's sensitivity through his hands or his eyes or face, that's just phrenology.
Yeah.
You can't tell anything about a human being by the way they look. It's what's inside.
And especially in this case with Joe Campbell and the use of a computer to find women who will be vulnerable.
We're not going to give away how it happens, but the very evidence of innocence becomes the evidence of guilt.
Yeah.
And the way it's all turned around and the twists and how they learn it and how the lawyer blinds himself to a DLBS, defense lawyer's blind spot, we call
I
it,
love
right?
that in the book, yes.
Right.
Yeah, and that's almost like a father's blind spot too, because Emma, who is a wonderful character, his daughter, starts to attack Daddy-O about women's rights and women's issues.
And it's very generational, and he has to learn from her because he's a 60s guy. In the 60s, you know, feminism was not all that prominent.
No, those, the Chicago Seven were as male chauvinists as there were any in the conservatives or liberals.
No question about that. And Abe is an old-fashioned guy, and his daughter really educates him. And of course, it becomes very dramatic what happens. We're not gonna say, but Abe's love for his daughter, his love for his mentor, his effort to try to use these generational differences to come to the right decision puts him in a terrible bind.
Yeah. Justin is interesting because of his, Justin being the assistant to Abe, his conflict with Rendi, who had been, what, a Mossad
Rendi is this woman who had been a Mossad agent in Israel, comes from a North African family, and is in some respects typical Israeli in the sense of gets right to the point, a little bit rude, very determined, will do anything, and she's Abe's on-again, off-again girlfriend and investigator, and she's constantly in conflict with Justin, the very uptight wasp. But you know, what I love about being able to write is you can make your characters change and grow, and everybody in this book changes very much in the course of the crisis that engulfs them and engulfs all the people close to them.
Some of the cases, too, in this book about Charlie O, a man on the death row, who is considered sane when he takes medication, and therefore now we can kill him, but insane if he is off medication, and then we can't kill him because a man has or a woman has to be sane and competent in order to be killed.
And so his own lawyer, to save his life, has to drive him crazy. Has to take him off the drugs.
Have you been in a position like that, Alan?
Yep. And the Charlie O case is based on several real cases. There really was a man on death row who went crazy and who was given drugs, and then his lawyer took him off the drugs in Texas. And there really is a case of a man who was on death row and another man did it and told his lawyer, and the lawyer couldn't come forward. So, you know, I'm not an artist. The muse doesn't come down and just sing to me. I am a lawyer who uses his 30 years of experience to try to be a teacher. And I hope the novel is, you know, well written and dramatic, but the characters are mostly people from my life, people from my experiences, people who I know, people who are my mentors, people who are my clients, people who I've taught about, people who I've read about. And what I try to do is remember them and listen to their voices and try to write as I recall them. So I've more constructed characters than invented them.
In order to write the book, how did you plot it? Did you have it, as you say, outlined before you even sat down to write
Yes.
the... Yeah.
But in the process of writing, some of my ideas changed. And, for example, I originally was going to write this book so that right in the beginning we learn what happens, and then the whole book is about the moral dilemma. And I decided to postpone the moral dilemma a little bit as I was writing it to make it more dramatic and to create a trial scene, which this trial scene I really think is unique in the genre of lawyers' books because it really reflects what happens at a trial. It's not just drama for drama's sake. It's about facial gestures.
Yes,
it's
because
about
the shadow jury has a whole other, doesn't see that
They see a different
charmer.
trial. Right.
They don't see.
Right.
And also, how much a lawyer can prepare a client to wear what he or she is going to wear at court, and whom do you look to, and what are you writing down that looks so scholarly? Well, it's the story you told me about our dear departed friend Louis Nizer, whom I really dedicate the show to, whom you thought was...
He was taking notes of my brilliant presentation, I thought, and he comes to me at the end and he shows me his notes, and it was a picture he had drawn of me.
But anybody watching would have said, oh, that's an industrious lawyer, and the man who's speaking must be speaking pearls of wisdom.
The question is whether he billed the client for the time he drew my picture. That's the interesting thing I find about this book, though, is that everybody is now watching trials on television, whether it be the Menendez case or whether it be O.J. or any of the other cases. And what you see on television is the surface. What you see is the finished product, but you don't see what goes into it. And reading The Advocate's Devil will give you a sense of how the lawyer interviewed the client, why the defendant took the stand or didn't take the stand, how the jury got selected, what goes into deciding which judges you want to have in the case, what goes into deciding how you make the oral argument. It's the behind-the-scenes look below the surface into the heart and soul of the lawyer and the defense team.
Alan, we're going to take a short pause. When we come back, let's talk about the changes in the legal profession. There was a proliferation of lawyers at a certain point. Now I think it's sort of going down after the sort of go-go 80s. What's the role of the judge really within a legal system? And is our system due for changes because of so much exposure? I mean, does a TV set belong in a courtroom?
Well,
we'll be back after a short pause.
Hi, I'm gonna be up here for a while, so let's chat. Sure, I was NBA Rookie of the Year, and I went to the Olympics twice. But I also played the piano, sax, and even got my college degree in mathematics. And I'm not bragging, just making a point. I couldn't have done all this on drugs. And I couldn't wear this. See, I'm also Navy Lieutenant Robinson. Now, how's that for hang time?
If you're the kind of person who'd rather tune an engine than eat, who reads a tachometer like a love story, for whom the roar of fully blown horsepower is a lullaby, have we got a machine for you? And in the hands of the right mechanic, it'll blow the doors off anything. Aim high, Air Force.
This is William Shatner. Imagine the training and skill it takes for a dog to serve as a blind person's eyes. Guide dogs give blind people the freedom to go wherever they want. And the law permits them everywhere that's open to the public. A blind person and a guide dog are a working team for personal independence. To learn more, call the Guide Dog Foundation for the Blind toll-free 1-800-548-4337. That's 1-800-548-4337.
You know, every mother wants their new baby to be healthy. I know that's how I felt about mine. But the mothers of these babies were not so lucky. These babies were born with the AIDS virus. Right now, there's no cure, but you can help prevent the spread of AIDS. If you're sexually active, please use a condom because it'll help prevent AIDS. Do it for yourself. Do it for your partner. Do it for the babies.
We're talking with Alan Dershowitz, author of the novel The Advocate's Devil, published by Warner Books. Alan, before the break, I presented you with a slew of questions about the law and its role in the 90s.
No question we're going to see major changes. You know, Heisenberg's principle is when you look at something through a microscope, you change it, and you can apply that to television in the courtroom. America is getting an incredible education about at least a small part of our legal system, the superficial view of what goes on at the trial. And it's enough to make many Americans ask themselves very hard questions about the system. A complete view requires that you understand what goes on behind the scenes as well, and I'm hoping that Advocate's Devil will contribute to giving people a much deeper view about the legal system and the ethical and the moral dilemmas that lawyers face. Why? Because I want change. I want to see improvements. I'm a teacher. And I see Advocate's Devil as part of my teaching role. I want to broaden my audience. I want to use fiction and exciting fiction with dramatic endings to try to bring people in and explain to them the complex role that lawyers play in the adversary system, the moral dilemmas they face. In the end, I'm not going to, again, without giving it away, Abe stands in front of a grave of a dear friend and asks to help resolve this ethical dilemma at the very end. And it remains somewhat unresolved because in life, these kinds of dilemmas that have divided people for 5,000 years are not going to be solved by simply saying, we've thought of the answer. There's no such answer to these questions.
A couple of things do come up. In this book, it has to do with the lawyer's ego. The lawyer who is exposed on Larry King, Charlie Rose, etc. And falling, the Icarus, falling in love with your own image.
No question. I purposely created a character, Abe Ringle, who was very much at ease with television, and Haskell, who was not. And the problem that Abe faces is he has gone on television, and he has affirmatively certified this man's innocence. And he thinks to himself, my God, what have I done? Am I creating vulnerability in women who may have seen me on TV asserting his innocence? That also contributes to the dilemma that he faces because television has magnified everything in the legal system.
As well as the fact that there are points of law that can allow a lawyer to protect his client from either lying on the stand or not telling all the truth, half the truth.
That's right. And lawyers get a license to practice law, and some people misunderstand this. That is not a license to lie. No lawyer is allowed to deliberately lie or mislead or allow his client to lie on the witness stand. And Abe and Justin discuss what the difference is between a lie and a half-truth. And on such distinctions are civilized societies built. We always make those kinds of distinctions in advocacy, in free speech, in the rules of libel, and in the courtroom. And they're very uncomfortable because we who live moral lives in our personal way, we would never go near the edge of any moral issues in our personal lives. And yet you come into court in a representational capacity and you have to skate very close to that edge. And it creates a zone of discomfort for any decent lawyer. You know, for lawyers who don't care, for lawyers who don't have any morals, it's a very easy profession. But for lawyers who are deeply moral human beings like Abe Ringle, flawed though he is in the book, for him the dilemma is critical.
Alan, Abe, Alan Dershowitz, hyphenate, you're living in Boston working at Harvard, which is a pretty laid-back conservative area. How do you handle the downside of people attacking you for maybe what would be called grandstanding or Abe grandstanding?
Well, I'm attacked from both sides. I'm attacked from the left because I'm not liberal enough. I'm attacked from the right because I'm not conservative enough. I know I'm doing something right if I'm attacked from all sides. And, of course, you get attacked for talking to the media. I think of myself as a teacher, and a teacher should not limit her or his audience to the classroom. I want people to read Advocate's Devil. I'm not embarrassed to say that. I worked very hard on it. I think it's like a law school class with an exciting background and context. So, yes, I want people to read it. Yes, I go on television to promote it. Yes, I feel very strongly about the Bill of Rights, and I go on television to promote it. And yes, my beliefs are part of my life, and I'm not embarrassed about it.
What is the role of DNA now in the legal profession?
Well, everybody agrees that DNA, and there are various kinds of DNA, is scientific enough to raise a reasonable doubt, so that if a person is in jail because he allegedly killed or raped somebody and DNA shows that he wasn't there, certainly it's enough to raise a reasonable doubt. And to free somebody, all you have to do is have a reasonable doubt. The real question is it scientific enough to overcome all reasonable doubt? And that's a question that's being faced in courts all over the country today.
Because a few years ago, Joe Wamba wrote the book, The Blooding, about its use over in England and the discovery of the DNA and using it as a factual to pinpoint a killer.
And I think no lawyer should be afraid of science. We're all in a quest for truth. We're trying to find out what really happened. Abe Ringle is dying to know what happened. Well, dying in almost the literal sense of the word. But he can't find out so easily.
But he does put his reputation on the line.
Right.
Would Alan Dershowitz ever do that?
I wouldn't do it the way Abe does it, because Abe actually goes out and declares his client's innocence. He does do it quite dramatically, and it comes back to haunt him. I think lawyers have to be very careful about what they say and when they say it. They shouldn't jump to conclusions too quickly. I have 3 rules. I never believe what the police and the prosecutor say about my client. Never believe what the media says about my client. I never believe what my client says about my client. I have to come to the truth myself. And when prosecutors or defense attorneys, on the first day of the trial, announce their personal belief in the client's guilt or innocence, they are fooling themselves and fooling the public, because they have to wait and see where the evidence comes down. You can have your working hypothesis, but don't come to any conclusion until you've seen the evidence, or you'll be blindsided the way Abe Ringle was in Advocate's Devil.
And like Abe Ringle, do your assistants go out and almost work the prosecution's case to make sure that the client is innocent?
I assign at least 1 or 2 students in every case I'm doing, be the prosecutor. I try to get people who are gung-ho prosecutors. Be the prosecutor. Be the devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Make the arguments, and if I can't beat down your arguments, I can't win in court. So I have to know. I can't ever be surprised. And in this book, Abe Ringle anticipates what the very brilliant prosecutor's arguments, a woman prosecutor, some resemblance to Marcia Clark, but it was written well before I ever heard of Marcia Clark, interestingly
Listen, Alan, you have now set up a sort of a group of characters for us who loved Nancy Drew as teenagers. Abe Ringle is sort of the grown-up version. Is he going to have a sequel?
Oh, no question. My publisher loved this book so much, immediately he gave me a 2-book contract. We're trying very hard to get a movie made of Advocate's Devil, and I think it's a natural in terms of the twists of the plot. And my next novel is going to be set in the United States Supreme Court, and it's a political legal thriller with some of the same characters.
I will look forward to it. Will you autograph my book?
By all means.
And if you would like a copy of our publication, Good Books, send me a stamped, self-addressed envelope to Good Books, P.O. Box 69, 1640. Los Angeles, California, 90069. Look for our column in all the California Press Bureau's newspapers. We'll tell you about some other books we've liked recently. We'll even tell you about a book, I mentioned it earlier, the late Louis Nizer, one of the great attorneys in America, a man who really loved the free speech, who believed in protecting the innocent, and a man who had the gift of a golden tongue in court, as well as really a golden pen. From what I have heard, more lawyers have gone into the field of law because they have read this book, My Life in Court.